Dr. Dispenza, what are we talking about tonight? Tactics for self-regulation. Just before we start, I just had an amazing session by myself there for 2 hours. People may see what I do as meditation, but I don't think it's related the way that I do it. Basically, I just lie there. And then I incorporate different breathing techniques, pretty basic ones. Just inhaling for 4 seconds, holding your breath for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding for 4 seconds. It's just a 4 second cycle. Inhale, hold, exhale, hold. And each phase is just 4 seconds. And then there's no timing. I would set my alarm for like 3 hours for the session. But as for how many sets of breathing I do, it's just, you just get into a flow. So I don't know how many times I did that block breathing or that cycle of breathing. And then sometimes I do like what I call as sky breathing, where I'll inhale, and as I'm inhaling, I'll say the name sky. And then as I'm exhaling, that'll be one. So it'll be inhale, sky, one. And then I'll do that up to 122 cycles. 122 count. Why the number 122? Well, we're talking about angel numbers there. Look, after I finish doing Joe Dispenza review, so this is going to be video number 8. I'm only going to do another 2 more, so there'll be 10 videos in this series. Then I'll start talking about what I actually do, how I actually incorporate breathing practices into mind practicing. And a lot of the things I do is based on what meditators do and neuroscientists like Dr. Joe talks about, and neurosurgeons like Dr. James Doty. So all the concepts that I apply into my practices, when I explain them, you may feel that they're not new or not original, whereas for me they're brand new, and it really is my take on how I apply all the different things that I've learned from all the different great people in the self-development space. Another thing I do during, like I did during my 2 hour session tonight, even though I planned on a 3 hour session, I got to 2 hours and I just thought, I want to create. That's what that space does to you. When you get your mind open and free, your mind searches for ways to create in any capacity possible. Anyway, while I was in that 2 hour session, supposed to be 3 hours, I also incorporated Wim Hof's breathing technique. He's got like a 3 round cycle, lasts for about 12 minutes. Inhaling, exhaling, inhale, hold your breath for 1 minute. And then that's 1 round. Then the second round, you're doing the same thing. But the second round of holding your breath is 90 seconds, a minute and a half. And so is the third round. So when you listen to his guided breathing practice, it goes for just not really 12 minutes, probably just over 11 minutes. And that is in sync with the breathing practice and mental mind practice that I incorporate. Anyway, to tonight's video, let's go. Where are we at? Okay. Tactics for self-regulation. What say ye?
Self-regulation, the term that gets thrown around an awful lot. What's that mean to you tactically? How do you employ that?
It's so easy in a matter of seconds to react to someone or something, to respond to some stray thought, and in a matter of seconds default back to those subconscious and unconscious programs because that emotion is driving you to behave as if you're in the past. It's automatic, right? So it's seamless. The default system causes us to lose our connection to the vision of the future, our belief in the future. And it happens so fast that we forget of that future, right? So self-regulation is the ability to regulate your or control your internal state of how you're thinking and feeling in a condition in your environment that normally would create another feeling or another emotion, right? So here's one of the things we did in our studies. We don't do it anymore, but we did it for a long time. We saw that our community, we could teach them how to make their heart beat more coherently. And when the heart does that, it sends out a magnetic field up to 3 meters wide. It's a big field. And people can get really good at that. And you can do it in a ballroom with 1,000 other people or 2,000 other people. Close your eyes, forget about your outer environment.
Imagine that. Feeling the vibe with a 3 meter radius emanating from you outwards, vibrating from your heart. It's a true scientific fact. These guys, Dr. Joe and co. and others, have measured your vibration from, or the electrical pulses that your heart is creating, and the field that it emits that signal out. So imagine if you're on a good vibe, within 3 meters of you, people can feel that. They can sense it. And then he's talking about doing it in a ballroom with 1,000 others. How high would the vibe be? The vibe tribe. Let's go.
Breathe and feel, practice feeling these elevated emotions, get good at it, and you can manage that, okay? But what about when you open your eyes now? What happens when you walk out into your life, you know? And so we decided that we would take our entire community and we would put them in circumstances and conditions, whether it was rappelling off the side of a building or standing on the top of a 50-foot pole and reaching for, jumping for a trampoline, whatever it was.
Bit of dysregulation.
Something to disrupt that level of order. And this was not about an adrenaline rush. This was actually about the opposite. That if you put the person in the circumstances that would normally cause an automatic fear response, automatic vigilance, automatic anxiety.
So he's talking about they're all in the vibe, but they're in the vibe when they're in a safe and comfortable environment, all clustered together. That's good until you get tested in daily life. So he did a test where he put them beyond experiences that they would usually have during their daily life and created like an artificial experience simulation for them where they have to rappel, like rock climbing down backwards down a building, and see how their vibration or their heart will handle that, how they would respond now that they're put in a dysregulated environment or situation. Are they still going to be at peace?
Give them something to do and teach them how to regulate their internal state and get back into heart coherence. And they're wearing monitors, right, when we're doing this. Practice that and accomplish, right? If you could self-regulate in that moment and you return back into your life and you just did it there, it's going to feel like you should be able to do it in your life as well. Not only that, if you put the stakes really high and the threshold is really high, then you face the problems in your life. You're like, that's not so bad relative to what I just what I just did. So self-regulation is to be able to change your emotional state, get back into that heart relaxed. The formula that we discovered is that the more relaxed you are in your heart, the more awake you are in your brain. For some reason, if you keep relaxing in your heart, the brain keeps becoming more awake and aware. So instead of stressed out, unconscious, and living in a program, practicing relaxing your heart and awaken your brain can actually become a habit. So being able to regulate your emotional state in the same environment. In other words, think, act, and feel differently in the same conditions in your life. And that's regulation.
What are the cues that you're getting people to follow? What are the most powerful ways that people can self-regulate?
Oh my goodness. We discovered that when energy makes it to the heart and it moves to the brain, we start seeing this resonance that starts to take place in the brain. In other words, if people get really good at this, their brain has a delta wave that's acting as a carrier to a theta wave. And the theta wave is in a resonance or a harmonic to an alpha to beta, beta to high beta, and high beta right to gamma, right? So we practice doing that with our eyes closed, and we do it over and over again, relaxed and awake, relaxed and awake. And then, of course, we practice the walking meditation. So if you can do it seated in your chair, let's stand up. Let's all go to the beach. Let's practice standing up. Why? Because you got to practice standing up, practice with your eyes closed. Do the same thing you were doing laying down. Now do it standing up. Okay, now I can do it standing up. I can change my state. Now let's open your eyes. Now,
But when you say do it standing up, what is it?
practice relaxing in your heart. It's a formula that we use. It's a meditation that we use.
So he's talking about all the wave states that the mind can experience during our lives. So he talked about delta wave, that's the lowest frequency of waveform that your brain can signal around itself and throughout the body. So the delta wave state, just imagine like you have all these waves, like frequency waves in the ocean. And the slower the waves are, and the distance in between, like the gap of time in between each wave peak, imagine if it's slow, it's almost like flat or calm. If you can imagine a flat day, wave condition wise at the beach. And then as the wave frequency picks up, then you start moving into beta, then high beta, then theta, then alpha. No, sorry. Go from delta, theta, high theta, beta, up to alpha, and to gamma. Gamma is like when you're fully active, your brain is fully active. Say like if you're at work or you're at the gym, your mind is in a gamma state. So he's talking about having the ability of keeping your mind in a delta state. Bearing in mind, delta state is the slowest type of waveform in your brain. And it's also in that state where you have like deep sleep and you dream. So imagine being at work, but in a dream state, like with your mind. So regardless what the environment is like or what situation you're in, your mind is still deeply rested. And that's what he's talking about. How to regulate those brain waves throughout your life. And then also, you can't really stay in delta all the time, like chilled out, like a monk up in the mountains. You need to be in different wave frequency states throughout your day, except for when you're under stress, you need to regulate it then so that you're able to think clearly and create, not just survive. So say, for example, you're in a traffic jam and you might be in a road rage situation. The normal response by your brain, if you haven't trained it, will go straight to gamma mode, straight to gamma frequency. But if you've been trained or you're training yourself, you can reduce that frequency down where the brain waves are slower, and the peaks are like there's more time in between. And as you can imagine, when you have more time in between the peak of your waves, you'll come up with a clearer response. Bear in mind, this video is all about self-regulation, so you can regulate yourself up if you're too chilled when you really need to go to work or do something creative. You got to say to yourself, I can't stay in doubt. I can't dream all day. I got things to do. So you regulate yourself up. And then if you're peaking too much, overexcited or too anxious, too aggressive, regulate yourself down. So
And we
you're
take
in
people through
control.
it. So practice that, standing up instead of laying down. Now open your eyes and self-regulate. Practice doing that with your eyes open until it becomes a habit, right? So walk in that state with your eyes open. Keep practicing that over and over again. Sooner or later, it's going to become easier and easier for you to do it. So when a person has practiced it enough times, they can create the distinction. They can know the difference between when they're there and when they're not. Like they'll know it immediately. They lose it. Like they fall from grace. I lost it. So then they have just one of two choices. Stay in the program the rest of the day and complain, blame, and make excuses and feel sorry for yourself. Or pause for a moment, excuse yourself, get back into that state, relax in your heart and awaken your brain again. And being able to do it when you're out of balance is the reason why we do it. We're doing it to get back into balance. So it takes practice, but gosh, we have so many people that do it really well. So walk as it, practice with your eyes open, just like you do with your eyes closed.
Talk to me about the power of mental rehearsal. This is something that you spend an awful lot of time working on.
So I'm always fascinated with neurogenesis or growth in the brain. I've always been fascinated by it. And so if you look at a musician, you look at an athlete, you look at a performer or an actress, you look at a dancer, anybody who's learning a skill, there's a period of time where they have to consciously practice what they're doing. They have to consciously put a lot of their attention, a lot of their awareness, and a lot of their energy on what they're doing. It takes a lot of energy for them to start this whole process. If they keep practicing it after a period of time, the redundancy of the experience then starts to install enough circuitry for them to do it more automatically. It just gets more natural and easy. And that's kind of the physical rehearsal of whatever they're doing. That's really important. But what separates that person to the mind of the champion is the person who will sit down and rehearse the act of what they're about to do. They'll take the time and they'll mentally rehearse the action. And what the research shows is that when you mentally rehearse doing something, the brain does not know the difference between the outside world event and what you're imagining in your mind. To the brain, it's exactly the same. So as you begin to rehearse what you're doing and you put yourself in the scene and you practice it, if the brain doesn't know the difference between the real life experience that's out there and what you're rehearsing in your mind, experience creates circuitry in the brain. So you start laying down hardware in the brain to look like you've done it, to look like you've already experienced it. Now the brain's, as I said, no longer a record of the past. It's now becoming a map to the future, okay? Keep practicing it, doing it past that point, keep rehearsing it. Then all of a sudden, nerve cells that wire together, it gets more automatic. It gets more like a software program. It becomes easier to do. So studies have been done on this where they took people that never played the piano before and divided them into two categories. And they did functional scans on both of the groups. And in one group, they had them come and learn one-handed scales and chords for 5 days. And they had to practice 2 hours a day. And so they played the scales and chords, and at the end of 5 days, as you would imagine, they had a whole new set of circuits in the motor cortex of the brain. Well, you learn new information, learning's making new synaptic connections. Get some instruction, get your body involved, and get your body involved, you're going to have an experience. Experience enriches the brain. Pay attention to what you're doing. You got to pay attention and repeat it over and over again. Repetition, firing and wiring, you assemble new neural architecture, okay? Post scans show that. Take a group of people and have them close their eyes and mentally rehearse playing the scales and chords for 2 hours a day for 5 days. At the end of those 5 days, the people that mentally rehearse playing the scales and chords, their brain looked like they've been playing the piano for 5 days, but they never lift the finger. Take those people and set them in front of a piano. They never played the piano before, and they'll actually play those scales and chords. So they primed their brain so that they could actually step into that footprint. So if you're going to really want to begin to make measurable changes in your life because you want to heal from your condition or disease, then you can't be resentful around your ex. And so you're going to have to figure out a way how you're going to have to act. What would love do? What would greatness look like? How am I going to overcome this? And how am I going to behave in this circumstance? Because the 1 hour of my good meditation where I felt great in my heart and connected and coherent in my brain, and then the rest of the day, I'm frustrated and impatient. Okay, I got to figure this out. So I'm feeling better. I'm sleeping better. I have more energy. I have less pain, but my values are still the same. Okay, 1 hour against 15 hours. I gotta start rehearsing so I could actually get in the game so that I'm not going to fall and return back to the default to that old personality because I'm not going to heal.
So there's a few layers in there. Chris asked Dr. Joe about the impact or effect of visualization. And then Dr. Joe first applied that to athletes or actors, actresses, performers, where they would visualize, say, for example, the 100-meter Usain Bolt, ex-world champion, would visualize the ending line, the finish line, and how he would start. He would run like mentally, all of them do this mental practice where they visualize how they start the race, like what position they're in when they're at the blocks. Then they practice listening to the gun or the sound of the starter gun and then launching into their warm-up steps of the sprint. And then as the race progresses in their mind, they can see and feel how their body will be working until they're in full sprint glide mode towards the finish line. And then when they go to run the race, they do exactly that, or their interpretation of what they visualize. So an actor and actress can get into character the same way. And then he talked about like research or experiments that they did on people where one group, they put some of them through like 5 days piano practice and were actually practicing playing the notes on the piano keyboard. And the other part of the group, there was no keyboard, but they just practiced mentally. But at the end of the 5-day experiment, both groups were able to play that tune, proving that you can rewire your brain into getting your body to perform what software you installed via your mind through visualization techniques. And that software, starting as a thought, the more you repeat it, it becomes actual hardware in your brain. So they start connecting your thoughts, and then the nerves in your brain start laying down the actual hardwire that is required to get your body to act out those thoughts. And then the third layer of it all was the fact that he's talking about healing, using the same visualization practice or technique to heal yourself from either trauma, like emotional experiences, negative experiences. But in his case, similar to like the people that didn't have a keyboard in front of them, he was actually paralyzed, if you know anything about his backstory, when he was 22 years of age. So he had so much time to just lie there. He started visualizing, even though he was paralyzed from the neck down, and the doctors told him he'll never walk again. He started visualizing his limbs moving. And through that visualization, he changed like mental software, converted it by visualizing and the brain enacting it, laying down hardware in his brain until his body healed itself. The brain actually caused all his paralyzed nervous system to reignite, refire, and act out the actions that he was visualizing. So we can do it in those three areas. If you want to visualize a good outcome in your near future or distant future, visualize. If you want to heal from something, even if it's not like back years ago, but just from a stressful day that you've had on any day, visualize your way out of it. Lay down new circuitry of how you're going to feel about the oncoming day or the new things that you're looking forward to in the near future, like the next 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days, 5 months. Visualize that and change your like install the software to change the hardware in your brain. And then finally, just use visualization in general to be the better version of ourselves. And that, my friends and family, is the end of our review, our listening to Dr. Joe and Chris Williamson tonight. Love you all. We've got to remember that life is the be-all and never end at all. The purpose of life is to create more life. You see it in nature, you see it in every species. The only species that struggle with wondering what the purpose of life is are humans, because humans have lost their way, whereas nature hasn't. A tree is a tree so that it can create more trees. A bee is a bee so it can create more bees. That's their purpose. That's the reason why they are given birth. They come into this life. That's the reason why they eat. That's the reason why they sleep. They've only got one purpose. They got to eat, sleep, and drink so that they can recreate more of their own kind. And that's what we have to do, people. Love you all. You are my who. Let's go.